one of the things I always point out to people, because so much of the UFO and even New Age community has this false belief of, well, you know, we need to go out there, and there are the good ETs and there are bad ETs, and the bad ETs we need to fight and, you know, have this existential struggle with, sort of like some of the crazy teachings that you find in various places. And I'm going, okay, let's think about this for a moment. In the Cold War, we had a few thousand thermonuclear weapons aimed at each other between the Soviet Union and the United States, and any deployment of that system would have resulted in the extinction of all life on Earth, in a nuclear winter and a Holocaust like we've never seen. So if you're dealing with interstellar technologies that are much more advanced than hydrogen bombs and atomic bombs, you really think we're going to go from where we are now into interplanetary conflict, which is what Douglas MacArthur called for in the Congress in the mid-50s in his last speech to Congress, when he said World War III will be interplanetary, because you have people who have this sort of very atavistic and tribal mindset that if they're out there and we can't control them, they're an enemy. And that's really how basic it is. You know, I had a guy who was with Navy intelligence come up to me after a talk I gave some years ago, and he began to explain to me that they had developed electromagnetic weapon systems that not only track these objects, which is how the military craft show up so quickly after a sighting like you had, but also have electromagnetic weapons that target and attempt to hit and destroy these extraterrestrial vehicles, and that they have done so on a number of occasions, unfortunately successfully. Not a very high success rate, but enough that it's been terrible when it has happened. And I asked him, I said, why would we do something so stupid? He says, because they can. He says it's basically like dogs peeing on their property, marking their property, that these guys view this as our planet, and these are intruders, and therefore if they're in our atmosphere and airspace, we're going to shoot them down. I mean, it's just that simplistic. So, you know, now there's another agenda, and that's the agenda of trying to eventually roll out another sort of decoy. And you know, most wars of the last century have been stagecrafted and organized by the gangbangsters and warmongers and war profiteers, and certainly the Iraq War was. And you look at you know, if you really are trying to build your war capability and your budget for corporate military spending and grow it past $1 trillion to $2 or $3 trillion and $4 trillion, you've got to have a sizable enemy. And this is why there's so much false information about this alleged alien threat that's out there. And our experience, having gone around the world for 22 years, is that the only time we've been threatened is when humans have threatened us, or police in Mexico have tried to rob us and take our passports and cash or whatever. But we've never had anything but the most beautiful experiences with the actual ETs. And I tell people that is a body of evidence and experience that I'll hold it to any of the myths that are out there. And yet, you know, most people are very confused on this central issue because they hear about all the horrible things that allegedly the ETs are doing, and they don't realize that military special forces have developed anti-gravity vehicles. They have these little creatures called programmed life forms that look like aliens, and I call them aliens because I call the real ETs, and that have been engaged in mutilations and abductions and all kinds of frightening scenarios. And I have a document from the Strategic Studies Institute that talks about the use of abductions and advanced aircraft like this and robotic life forms to stagecraft a scenario where the public would be afraid of aliens so that the world could be united around a common alien threat. And interestingly, this is quite separate from what Werner von Braun, the guy who invented the rocket for Hitler, said on his deathbed to Carol Rosin when he said, you know, this has been an agenda operating for some time, that they would try to hoax a threat from outer space. And so what I tell people is that it's a little bit like the old wizard in The Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, pulling all these levers and scaring the bejeebies out of everyone. And it's just stagecraft. And that is the word that's used in this document, is stagecraft. And they're very good at it. And 99.99% of people who study the UFO subject are taken in by that paradigm of fear and alien invasion, so much so that it's almost all that you see coming out of Hollywood and cable news channels. And if you go to a UFO conference, about 90% of the subject matter is on stuff that's stagecraft and hoaxed. So it becomes a very difficult thing. So, we're sort of a voice in the wilderness saying, yes, but wait a minute, let's really take a look at this and look at it dispassionately, because, any civilization that could travel through other dimensions faster than the speed of light and get here would have absolutely no problem taking on this planet 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago or 50 years ago or today. And that's not their agenda. They don't care to do that. The only thing they're really looking from us is peace and cooperation in space and the development of our state of consciousness and a spiritual social development, so we can join with these interplanetary civilizations. And that's the big challenge of facing the world today, actually.